This is a underlying kind of thesis that I have investing in founders and startups is that clearly when we decide to invest in them, we already know that they're brilliant at something. They're a brilliant technician, brilliant creative, whatever it is, brilliant problem solution. We already see that. But then it's, what about their emotional intelligence? What about leadership intelligence, relational intelligence? So I'm looking at EQ, RQ, LQ, and we're trying to assess if this founder can really build and scale, which usually means building and scaling a team. And that takes real emotional and relational and leadership intelligence.
I'm Brandon Reed, and you're listening to Ready, Set, Startup, a podcast that brings you industry-tested perspectives from leaders working in all areas of the startup lifecycle, so you can learn from the wisdom that they've gained over years in their fields of expertise and apply it in your own entrepreneurial journeys. Let's get into it. On today's show, I'm talking with Reuben Levinsohn, founding partner at Washington Advisors and Ventures. Reuben is one of those founders that was cut from the entrepreneur cloth from the start, and there was likely nothing else he was going to spend his career doing than starting, scaling, and investing in companies. I mean, what 9-year-old has a crew of younger employees running his paper routes for him so that it becomes the largest in the district? I mean, a conventional career path never seemed to be one that Reuben was going to be taking. But over the years, he's founded and exited multiple companies, and in the most recent chapter of his journey, he's been on the investor side, both as an angel and with his VC firm. He's incredibly passionate about equipping founders with the resources that they need to get funded, scale effectively, and exit profitably. He is a wealth of knowledge on everything from building an effective team to how to pitch a compelling story to ensuring founders are caring for themselves as much as they care for their companies. I'm confident that you'll find a ton of valuable insight in what he has to share. But first, let's go back to the early days of Reuben's career, when he founded his first real company injecting innovative technology solutions into residential painting services.
My story is a founder's story. I started out in my 20s and saw an opportunity to bring tech into the sleepy old house painting business.
Oh,
and It ended up working out pretty well for me. I did that in my 20s and just saw some ways that we could improve the estimating process, the sales and delivery process, proposal process, job management, and in such an industry that just had very little professionalism. And it was a big problem solution kind of match, but I didn't really know that at the time. I was just seeing that naturally and brought some tech to that. So I'd say tech-enabled house painting, and that did really well in my 20s. We ended up becoming the largest non-union painting company in Michigan.
Oh,
and I sold that. I got excited about having my first exit, and so I packaged it up and sold it by the time I was 30.
Okay.
And that was my real entry into entrepreneurship in general, and just started out as my own founder story.
What was your technical background? What enabled you to see that problem and say, "Hey, technology can solve this"?
I don't have a technical background, but I was able to get some local technicians to help. And we started with basic, just advanced Excel, trying to say, like, how can we make this a better experience for our salesperson, the homeowner who's making the decision, the job management, the user experience. It was more just seeing a problem from trying to run a painting company and seeing who the competition was and how poorly it was being done. But then all of that got rolled up into a franchise system, and they really took it from there. They put a lot of proprietary tech on it, and we were all able to benefit from that.
So when you were you working in any kind of like full-time career before that, or were you in school while you were doing that?
I was at Michigan State as a student before that. I dropped out my junior year when I got way too excited about what we were doing in this painting business. I took a semester off thinking I'd go back. And we started getting so much work, to be honest. It just started growing so fast. I never went back to school from there. And I've built and sold and built more companies since then, of course. And I'm involved in quite a few today, but that was just kind of my entry point into it.
And so once you did that first one, you weren't working for anybody after that. You were like, entrepreneurship's the path for
I've
me.
never really had a job. No,
Yeah, yeah.
no.
Crazy. I know. I always say like, "Oh man, after doing entrepreneurship, I feel unemployable," because like it's a whole different skill
Yeah, it's
set
pretty
that
hard,
you learn.
right?
Yeah.
I guess my first entry, and didn't know I was an entrepreneur, but at 9 years old, I had a paper route. My mom helped me get a paper route, and by the time I was 12 or 13, I had the largest route in the district because I started hiring my younger brother and all his friends to run the paper route, and I started getting more and more streets added to my route. And I remember the district manager coming up to my house. I'm like 13. And he's like, "What are you doing? You have this largest route in the whole district. How are you servicing all these customers?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know. I've got my brother and all his friends delivering the papers."
That's awesome.
So I
That's
guess that
amazing.
was my first founder story.
Totally. Totally, absolutely. Yep, super entrepreneurial and a
And
cool opportunity at that young age.
from there, when I sold my business at about 30 years old, I sold that painting business. I had a really nice little exit. I didn't even call it an exit at the time. We didn't know what to call these things in the 90s, but I did realize that I like to build something. Um, I'm not the creator. I'm not the inventor type. I'm more the give me something, I'm going to do it harder, faster, bigger than you are than others and beat my competition that way. But I had a really successful sale at 30, but I also learned a ton going through the exit process of like what I could have done different, how I could have moved the needle on the EBITDA multiplier better. So I took a lot of that, what I learned, and realized there's a lot of small businesses and businesses that can scale. They might be scale ready or exit ready and they don't know it. And so it started developing kind of a exit planning process to help other business owners and founders get through that process. And I'm really passionate about, we'll get there, but I'm really passionate about for anybody that's taking venture capital, because today I run a venture fund, fast forward, right? There's a lot of journey in between we can talk
Mhm.
about, but running a venture fund and being an angel investor, um, I get frustrated sometimes with the amount of times I see founders take venture capital and say we're going to build and have an exit, but they don't really know what that means.
Mhm. Mhm.
And for them, if you're taking venture capital or taking any investor money, I think you have the responsibility. You're a fiduciary now. You have the responsibility to build something from day one that's going to be attractive for buyers. So
Mhm. Mhm.
fast forwarding to today, I have 4 CEPAs on staff, certified exit planning advisors, and we're running
Okay.
cohorts called Healthy Founders, Healthy Exits. And this is to help founders who are
Cool.
building and taking investor capital to build and make decisions based on what buyers are going to be looking for.
That's really neat. So is it like a, do are startups, applying for it and it's like an accelerator? They're coming in, or are you taking equity? How are you helping these
Yeah.
companies?
Yeah, you know how you see all the support. There's amazing resources and support and incubators and accelerators on the front end to get you investable or to get you to
Right.
market. You know, Y Combinator, Techstars, the two big ones, they're there to get you to market and get you to investors. What we're doing is flipping that support to the back end, call it an
Okay.
exit studio or an exit accelerator, because that's the missing piece that we see is you can get all these companies to market and VC can keep investing and hoping that 1 out of 10 makes it to an exit, or we can really get proactive on that and give them the resources or cohort style to help them build a plan for exit.
So let's talk a little bit about, let's do kind of do that fast forward and talk about, that's a piece of what you're doing today, this exit accelerator. What else? How else are you involved with startups today? What are you up to?
So we have a venture studio. Washington Avenue Ventures is a venture studio, and we have a fund, Exit Quotient Ventures. We're pretty transparent with that name, Exit Quotient EQV. Our site is exitquotient.com. And our fund is focused on Midwest. This particular fund is focused on Midwest founders, roots in the Midwest, or they're based in the Midwest, because we can support them best here. And we really like to get involved where we can. We're investing seed stage, primarily those that are they either have paid pilots or they've switched to full revenue model. And we can see there's an actual demand. There's a growing demand, or MRR is growing. We're looking for some velocity at seed. And then ultimately, what I need to see is that they have a real compelling plan for exit.
That makes sense, and that's really cool. I love that. I know when we first touched base, you talked about your roots in the Midwest and how you guys stick close to there and like to support your startups because you are more stick to startups that are founded or have roots there because you can support them better in that geographical space, and that just shows me how hands on you guys like to be, and I love hearing that, especially from a founder's perspective, that you guys step in and try to help like that, and it's really cool. Um, what do you think is as you have just been involved with so many startups over the years, what is one thing about entrepreneurship? And I guess we can even tie it into your early years of that first company, and then the others you were involved in and started as you grew, and then you went on the venture side and you began investing and mentoring and bringing other startups up. Through that process, what's something about entrepreneurship, about the startup world, that you've been forced to really rethink over the years? Something you felt was true and just like a solid truism that you've had to, yeah, reshape as you've learned more.
Yeah, this is a underlying kind of thesis that I have investing in founders and startups is that clearly when we decide to invest in them, we already know that they're brilliant at something. They're a brilliant technician, brilliant creative, whatever it is, brilliant problem solution. We already see that. But then it's what about their emotional intelligence? What about leadership intelligence, relational intelligence? So I'm looking at EQ, RQ, LQ, and we're trying to assess if this founder can really build and scale, which usually means building and scaling a team. I mean, even with AI, reducing maybe the number of team members they're going to need, they're still going to need to build something that's in the 10 to 30 people to get to any significant valuation or exit. And that takes real emotional and relational and leadership intelligence. That's where I focus. I started a podcast called Flying with Founders very organically. Actually, some founders started the podcast for me. They were flying with me in my plane one day, just a single engine, 4-seat plane that we're flying them to a pitch event. And they're threw a GoPro up and they start talking and they cut some content and said, we should call this Flying with Founders. So we started that, and now today, Flying with Founders, that's the stuff we talk about mostly. It's
Hmm.
the real human aspect of building a
Totally.
business and what it takes. Flying with Founders isn't just a podcast now. We're a resource platform for healthy founders, healthy exits. We do founder retreats every year to get them out of the chaos and focused on some personal wellness, coming back with our real vision and action plan for their company and their team. We do monthly meetups inside the mind of a VC where I just do some real talk with them about what it takes to build an acquirable company. We do a monthly meetup called Healthy Founders. It's just a wellness focus in the morning.
Mm,
So yeah, we're really digging into what you're getting at. It's they're brilliant at something, but a lot of
yeah.
them just lack that emotional, relational leadership intelligence.
Yeah, no, that's so good, and I bet over the years, yeah, you've seen the gamut of people who are on the low end of that and the high end of that and be able to identify that quickly. Now I want to talk a little bit more about that, about the founders you've worked with and some of these common traits that you're seeing as you're identifying and looking for all of those acronyms of like, what do you guys have that'll allow you to lead this company and ultimately exit? What are some of those traits that you're looking for? You walked through a couple of them, but articulate that a little bit more for me of what you're looking for as you talk about a founder that you're interested in investing in.
I'm looking for them to be it's the aptitude for growth, they've got to be ready
Mm,
for growth and wanting that sort of growth. Of course, if as an investor, if we get the opportunity to invest in founders who've already been through that cycle, they've built, scaled, and exited, that's a big plus for us. But we're not a huge fund that gets to see a lot of second, third time founders. So, when we do, we're very interested in those. If they're a subject matter expert in the solution they've created and they've had an exit, that's a big plus. But most times I'm not getting to see that. They're first time founders. So they haven't been through that cycle of building, scaling, exiting. So, yeah, those are the big things. Do they understand that there's a lot they don't know? Are they curious enough to learn it all? Are they going to take the coaching? Are they going to communicate with us? That's a big one because we've all, as I say, you become a fund manager once you've been a frustrated angel investor.
yeah, no, that makes sense. And as you, you use the word coaching and support, and you've mentioned that a couple times. As you step into these, the stories with these founders, and you decide to invest, what is a way that you have found to be an effective coach to them, an effective mentor? Founders can be, very hard charging, very hard headed, very stubborn sometimes. How are you giving feedback in a way that they receive it best? How have you best found that relationship to work?
First, it's just creating like an infrastructure they can plug into for this stuff. And I mentioned earlier, I don't know if we caught it, but we have 2 monthly meetups they can join by Zoom anywhere, anytime inside the mind of a VC, where we're there to just have some real talk with them about building for an exit. And then we have a founder wellness meetup monthly they can plug into just to kind of help avoid burnout, hang out with other founders who are focused on founder wellness. And then we have 3 retreats a year they can jump on for wellness and leadership development. So first, it's just creating the infrastructure for them to plug into. And then even on top of that, at Exit Quotient Ventures, we have what's called the EQ Advantage. And we have a piece on this that will show each of my VPs, venture partners in my fund, and what each of them brings to the table from their experience. So, like, Brock is amazing with financial modeling and helping them get their financial forecasts really solid. And Jillian gets involved when they need some think about marketing and promotion. And I've been coined the founder's compass. A lot of them come to me for critical direction in their life and their business.
Okay.
So that's where I'm the one that gets the late night call when they're
Yeah.
freaking out about their CTO leaving.
Yep. 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 Founder's
Yeah.
compass. That's a really neat role to play. A cool way to see it.
Goes along
What
with the flying with founders.
Yeah, totally does, totally does, nice. Um, what's a question that you think that founders don't ask enough when launching their companies, but should?
Don't ask us, the investors.
Don't ask, no, not I mean, it could be that, but I just mean in general. What's a question they're not asking in their business, to their users, to you as investors? What are they not
Well,
thinking of and asking?
I'll stick with my underlying theme here is they're not
Sure.
asking the right questions around what it really takes to build a company that's going to
Mm.
be attractive to a buyer.
Yep, that makes sense, and, you mentioned that even before we started recording, you're like, "Hey, I'm on a bit of a soapbox with this one, this is really important to me," and that's really interesting. I mean, I bet as an investor, you've just seen that so often of people know the words, they know what to say, they're like, "Oh, yeah, no, no, I'm
Yes.
building to exit," and then, yeah, what that actually means, and I bet you've really found ways to help weed that out of, like, you maybe know the questions to ask and places to poke and prod to say, like, "Do you really know what you mean when you say that?"
Well, you'd be surprised how often we get to the end of a pitch and it's a wonderful pitch and a great deck. And at the end, and they say they open it up for us to ask some questions. And we'll ask all the basic questions we need to get answered to check off the list. But then I always ask them, how do you see investors making money, making return on their investment? And that usually gets a lot of deer in the headlights. They aren't ready for that. And that I would think if you're asking for our money,
Yeah,
you should be
interesting.
ready to tell us how we're going to make return.
Mhm.
And they really stumble on that one. So I think
Mm.
that's often overlooked by them.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. That maybe the core reason why they're there is what catches them off guard. When you are, evaluating startups in relation to this kind of investment readiness, what are some of these like key elements that you're looking to see before they get the green light? You've mentioned, okay, do you understand what acquirable means, what an exit means, and how we get our money back, how we all make money here? Really, what I'm after here is like when you evaluate it as a whole, when you look at the entire package after a pitch, what are founders that get funded doing differently than founders that don't? What are they showing you?
I think one of the things there is that they're not trying to do too much with their solution. If they've really identified a very narrow problem they can solve and it's very understandable, it's much easier for them to display the need for it for us, especially if it comes from an industry they have some expertise in. Um, Here, just an easy example. I think our latest investment we made in our fund is with a startup called Pavewise. And we were really impressed with a founder who's been in the large road paving industry for many years and saw this problem and was able to bring a solution where they can use AI to track and predict the efficacy of when to pave based on weather pattern and all of this. And it's like, wow, he really saw a very narrow problem and he solved it, and it's being well received in his industry. It's very disruptive.
That's really neat.
That's one of
Um,
them. One of them is just
yeah.
trying not they're not trying to do too much.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I hear that. I hear a lot. You said that they're able to articulate the problem well. I'll hear investors say that they want founders to focus on the problem. Help me understand why this is an issue. Really paint the picture of how hairy and nasty and unachievable this problem is for everybody else except for you. And then I have other investors that will say, "Hey, like we can grasp the problem. You can give us the numbers and all the opportunity there in the market, but like focus on your solution. What are you building? What do you like to hear?"
There does need to be a pretty compelling reason that the problem has to be big enough, right?
Yeah,
For us to
yeah,
we wanna make sure they're not just building this because it's solves a problem they thought was interesting.
totally.
They do have to prove to us and show us that it's a large enough demand for it, and that's why, when we come in at seed stage, we need to see paid pilots. People are at least willing to pay for this. We need to see some conversion to paid. We still come in early, but we're not like an angel investor stage where it's just an idea. And then we've got to see a really clear track to their first million of ARR. Like they've got the funnel already filled. They're already talking to customers that are planning to convert, and it's starting to show through subscription model or whatever that they're going to hit that million ARR. Even if that's 18 months out, I just need to see a path to that.
Yep. No, that makes sense. So you like to see a little bit of both. You need to understand the problem, but you also need to see clear path to solution, profitable solution. That makes sense.
Yeah, and problem solution's great, but what's the go-to-market plan, and do they really understand sales and that you're gonna need more than founder-led sales? We need sales manager-led sales. We need district sales. What's your real plan for channel partners? How are you getting this out there? How are you gonna stand out in all the noise? Because there's always
Yeah.
competition.
We talked a little bit about this earlier, and I want to see though. I think we can still pull more out of this question of some of these intangibles. We can talk about ARR. We can talk about go to market. We can talk about pretty tangible things. Sometimes you can get more data out of that than others, but there are a lot of intangibles, a lot of feel, a lot of like getting the right vibe from the person in the room. This IQ or this EQ, and you mentioned LQ. How are you doing those evaluations? Is it just gut feel, and then you guys as a group, as partners, all talk about that? What tangible things have you been able to put on the evaluation of those intangibles for founders?
That is hard. We've been talking about that a lot. We have so many very clear things we do in our due diligence and the things we look for in their data room and everything. But that part you're getting at, it's been on my mind a lot. I want to develop more of a tangible assessment for that. I enjoy using things like Enneagram to kind of get to know them better and see what drives them and understand what drives them and how they make decisions. There's so many things out there for that, but I honestly, I like to get them on my podcast first, like you and I are doing, and just start really digging in with them. And you'd be surprised for some reason when you take someone up in the plane on a podcast, they're very vulnerable. Their
Yeah,
life is in your hands and they'll tell you
yeah.
anything and they're very honest. So I do
That
try
is
to get them
good.
up on my podcast, get them up in the air
I
and
bet.
maybe pull the engine
Nice,
back and
nice,
say, all right, now
nice.
tell me
Tell
who
the
you
truth.
really are.
Tell me the truth.
Tell me the truth.
If you wanna get out of this 45-degree dive, you tell me the truth, yeah.
Hand
That's
them the
funny.
keys and say, tell me the truth or I'm not putting these keys back in.
That's good. No, I bet that podcast is super helpful. I mean, it's the informal piece, right? It's getting to know them as a human being, and that can be easy to do in the sky for sure, but yeah, and the informality of a podcast, that I'm sure that's very helpful.
It helps. I
Um,
can't get them all on that, but
yeah.
sometimes it's just we do a pretty we're pretty thorough and we're also very efficient in our due diligence.
Mm,
Brock, my co-GP, focuses very much on the things that we have to check off the box, and then he does a really thorough, almost a 2-hour call. It's a really good deep conversation. Starts out more on the business side. It does get into some of the personal, and I like to join those calls with him whenever I can to kinda I'm listening more than I'm talking on those calls. I'm listening for a lot of things to make sure they've got some of that emotional intelligence, leadership intelligence. We're looking for it, but I don't have a formal way.
yeah, no, that's neat. I don't know who's figured out a formal evaluation of that piece, but I know it's, yeah, extremely important. What are some as you're looking for those things, you're looking as, like, green light metrics of like, "Hey, alright, they have these." On the opposite side of that, what are some red flags that you're looking for that when you see, you think, "Alright, this is not the right fit?"
Yeah.
I know you've mentioned in a couple times that, not inability to understand what does an acquirable business mean, but let's go beyond that.
Yeah, we assume a lot, especially first-time founders. We're just going to assume they don't really know what they're
Yeah.
talking about with getting acquired, so we have resources to plug them
Yeah.
into for that.
Sure.
But other things would be like just over presenting
Mm.
what they're really doing, or over presenting who the team is. Sometimes you get like the team slide, and they're bragging about all these amazing
Mm.
people on the team, and then I'll ask, so who's full time, and it's like
Yeah.
none of them. Like,
Yeah.
oh,
Right. Right.
okay, that's a
Yeah.
red flag because you just
Yeah.
presented it like you have this full time team.
Hmm.
Yeah, just be real honest and transparent with us of where they're at, what they need support in besides the money. Um, Trying to know everything is going to be a red flag for us. We do a pretty a nice, if we use AI before the meetings with them, we throw their deck and their website into an assessment tool, and you'd be surprised. We get a 27-page report about all the things that could be concerns or ways to de-risk this opportunity. And so we do some research prior to the call, and we ask a lot of deep questions because of that. And oftentimes they try to have the answers to all of it. And I know some of those, there's no way they could have the answer.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. You
The other
come
thing
much
would
more
just
prepared than they
be
do. Yeah.
the other thing would just be underestimating what their capital needs are going to be. Not knowing the path. Like when we say, okay, so if we come in this $1 million seed round, how did you come up with your cap valuation? Tell us about that. And a good answer might be, that's what my lead investor decided on. Okay, do we have a reputable, credible lead investor? Great. Point us to them. Let's find out why they decided on that valuation. And they'll probably share their due diligence with us. But a bad answer would just be like, I don't really have support for my 15 million val cap. So I want to know, and then I want to know what the next steps are on the capital stack. So we come in on the seed round, what's happening next? And if they don't have answers for that, then I really don't feel like you should be taking money if you don't know your whole pathway to exit. I'm going to go this, and then we're going to get to this revenue, and then I'm going to go to this valuation for my Series A, and I'm going to raise a Series A because I'm going to need this, this, and this to get to this, and then we're going to be acquirable. If
Mm.
they can't show me that roadmap of how much capital they're going to take to get there and what kind of an exit that should lead to, I just don't think they've done their research.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. As we talk about that moment of, the pitch, and you're coming in, it sounds like, yeah, very prepared with like, all right, what are some of the ways we can de-risk this? What are some critical questions we can ask? You guys are coming in very prepared and making sure you're ready. What are some ways you see founders coming in unprepared, or other mistakes that they're making? So the majority of my audience are founders and young founders, and I always try to push on these ideas of like, all right, if it's you and your business and you're hearing this investor talk about what they look for, trying to give them some real things to sink their teeth into, of like, what are some mistakes that founders are making, particularly as it pertains to them coming in and pitching, and how can they go?
Simple one is probably what I said earlier on, just trying to over present everything. Um, and maybe I think a lot of them know this, but they forget when they come into that first meeting that you're not trying to close an investment in this meeting. You're trying to get a second meeting, right? A second meeting, or understanding our process would be we always tell them at the beginning of the call, this is your time. So use it how you like. You can pull your deck up and do the pitch, or you can ask us questions, or you can whatever. I actually think it's smart when they start by asking us questions.
Hmm.
And a lot of them just go right into the pitch because they're conditioned for that. But when I give them the opportunity to ask us questions, I think that's a good time for them to say, tell me about your fund. Tell me about your process. What are you guys looking for, and how do you make decisions, and what size checks, and how fast can you write them? Like, we're open to answering
Hmm.
all of that before they get into the pitch. They could learn a lot about us and our process before.
Totally. Yeah, totally. What is a specific example you can think about, a founder or founding team, or a company that just knocked it out of the park? You don't have to go into details about the company, but what did they do? So those are some things they can do wrong, but like, what's an example of
Mm.
a group that just came in and just knocked it out of the park, and you're like, that's how you pitch. That's how you get us interested.
I'll use the example of a fun one that I just angel invested in. They're knocking it out of the park. Protein Pints ice cream. These guys are just brilliant. They were the first ones to really get to market with 30 grams of protein in a pint of ice cream, and it tastes good and it has low sugar, and they just nailed it. And it's two young guys who really just wanted protein in their ice cream for their workouts. But here's what I noticed really early about them. They knew what they didn't know. They said to me early on, like, yeah, we perfected a good ice cream recipe with protein, but we have no idea how to get this company to market.
Mm.
And they went out, they were really smart. They went out and said, who is experts in the field of specifically putting protein in products that have never had protein before? And they found two executives
Hmm.
from Catalina Crunch. These guys were probably in their 40s. They've already taken a company from 0 to 100 million in the protein CPG space. And they said to these guys, like, what do we got to do to get you? We're just two young guys. Well, they
Mhm.
got these two executives to come over,
Sweet.
negotiated the package with some equity and deferred comp and all that. And these guys have taken them to 23 million their first year to market. I think they're going to hit 60 million their second year. That's a company that's blowing up because they knew what they didn't know
They
and they
don't. Yep,
hired.
exactly.
Yeah. And I have another example of that where same kind of thing, young, brilliant technical founder with a language learning app knew that he couldn't sell the product, but he's really good at, I mean, he can sell it, but he doesn't have the time to sell the whole country of school districts. And he started hiring the best people in the industry. He's paying top dollar for them. He's raising money for that, but he's got 4 or 5 of the best specifically for language learning ed tech in the country who already know who to contact. They have the relationships. That's how you scale. You can't do it organically. You scale by being smart and strategic like that.
That's so interesting that he went and said, "All right, people, I need the who," and so he went and raised just to find the who. I mean, the others feels a little more typical of like, "All right, here's an equity package, we can defer comp," but like to go and actually raise because that's how important the right people in the right seats were for that scaling of that company.
Yeah, these founders knew that they had figured something out. They need to get
Yeah.
it to market fast. They can't mess around. They've got to
Mm.
pay top dollar for top people. And I think that's brilliant use of your resources and capital.
There's this question I have that I really love that digs into the point you made of you're not looking for actual investment in that first meeting. You're looking for a second meeting. You're looking to get us interested. And what is some advice that you have around how to get founders that second meeting? What are those things that are in specifically piquing your curiosity? We've talked about things that can show your EQ, your LQ, your ability to know your company, know your numbers. But what are some things that in particular pique your interest about like maybe the potential of this opportunity of like how big this could be or what you see in it? How do they get a second meeting?
Yeah, they can always try to create a little investor FOMO that it works
Yep.
occasionally with us, but if they know our network and they know who we co-invest with around us, because we're Midwest focused, it's not that hard to figure out based on where we're located and what we're investing in. They could look at our own portfolio on our website, which we keep updated, and see what investments we've made. They could ask questions about, yeah, like, tell me about this last investment you guys made in there. And when I see who the co-investors are, and oh, by the way, that VC is also looking at taking lead in my company. And so connecting dots in the network is helpful if they did a little bit of research there. And then really smart of them to bring on, and they rarely do this, but if bring on one of your investors on the call with
Mm,
us, because your
mm,
investor is going to speak a little bit more of our language of why they invested. That's going to probably 90% of the time get us to at least the second part of our process of digging a little deeper. Um, I had one do that recently that brought an investor on to the
mm.
call, and
That's
that
good.
investor and I had a follow up call, and I got all the information I needed to get them to the next step.
That's cool. That's a great idea. Well, let's move, Ruben, into a couple just closing questions I have for you here. Kind of take a step back more broadly in this space. And imagine that you woke up at the beginning of your career. You somehow retained all the knowledge that you've gotten over all these years, all this work with founders, your own startups, doing your own thing, founding, exiting. But you're right there at the very beginning. How do you start? Where do you start?
Oh, do I get to be back in my 20s with that kind of
Yeah,
energy?
man. With that kind of energy, that kind of knowledge. That's right.
Okay, if I get to go back to my 20s, then I want to be a founder again. I want to be the
Yeah.
founder because I learned so much
Yeah. But what
from
do you
my
do
first
differently this
exit.
time now that you know what you know?
Oh, I would be building for exit from day one.
Hmm.
I'd be reverse engineering the different companies I've built, I'd be reverse engineering them from what is a buyer going to look for in this, and I'd make a lot of different decisions, and I would do that much faster, and I would understand how best in class EBITDA multipliers work, and I would be making a lot of decisions based on valuation optimization for exit.
Cool. Yeah, you would. That's awesome. You would found and you would build for an exit and do that from the beginning. That's great advice.
If we're talking venture-backed,
Right.
investor-backed
Sure.
focus, of course. But
Sure. Sure.
um, of course, you can build a company without investors, and you
Mm-hmm.
don't need to build for exit. You can build something you love and have it be a business for you forever. It can spit off cash to you and your family forever. That's a
Yep.
wonderful thing too. But if we're
Mm-hmm.
talking investor-backed, yeah.
Cool. Awesome. So lastly for you here, I have what's one tool or quote or book, something that you found indispensable for you, either personally or professionally over the years?
Oh, 1 second, Scott. I need a copy of your book.
Nice.
Where is it? I'm at uh, the author's home right now of
Okay.
this book I'm
Nice.
going to show you.
Nice. Awesome.
This
I love
this
it.
is the book they need to. Thank you. This is Scott. Say real in quick case he uses it.
Hey, Scott.
What's going on, Brandon? How are you?
Hey, good. Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
This is the book I'm going to tell you that they ought to have out there
Awesome.
for
Yeah.
them.
Tell me the title.
Lift Others as You Climb. Scott Idle.
Cool.
Obviously, I have a lot of books that I've been through. You know, another one I've got right now that I like is Founder's Survival Guide.
Oh, cool. Yep.
Rachel Turner. It's good. There's so many great things in there. Scott's book, Lift Others As You Climb, is going to apply to a lot of that relational and leadership intelligence that I was talking about. It has some really good and duplicatable ideas, concepts, the 4 quadrants, things that even the founders could use with their leadership teams too, to really accelerate their ability to lead, grow, scale a team. And then Founders Survival Guide is going to really help them understand the 3 different leadership styles and when to apply those based on what stage their team is at. So the brave warrior mode, that's the founder who innovates and launches something and takes all the risk. And they got to do that in the beginning, but then they've got to be a bit more of an architect once they're trying to get infrastructure for growth. And then they got to kind of adjust to that wise monarch stage when they've got 20 people and they need to be back in the visionary role and keep everyone motivated. So I think those have been really good resources.
That's awesome. And yeah, boy, isn't it tough to find somebody that can traverse all those very different areas well. Like that's why you hear, I think, so often is of company the guy or girl who builds the business is often not the one who can scale or maintain it. And so there's often shifts of hands because it's so hard to do all those things well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
But
big
tools
thing
like
too.
that,
Knowing
can help.
knowing when they shouldn't be the CEO is very valuable to us. I love it when I've got a founder who says, you know,
Totally.
I'm an engineer. I'm not a CEO, but I'm gonna bring on the CEO. That's fine. We want to see that kind of awareness.
Totally. I agree. Awesome. Well, Reuben, this was super, super valuable. I love hearing from somebody who's been on both sides of it, who's founded their own company and then is now funding and investing in other companies to raise them up and allow them to use their skill sets to solve problems in the world. I love that. And this was a lot of unique perspective that I think my listeners will really enjoy. I appreciate you taking the time and sharing.
Happy to do it, Brandon. And if anyone has questions for me, they can reach out to me on LinkedIn or check us out at Flying with Founders. We're easy to find there. A lot of short form content we do out there in social media with Flying with Founders, but a lot of that will also promote events that they're free to join with us monthly too.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I will make sure to provide links to Flying with Founders for sure in the show notes. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate you. All right, you take care.
Yep. Thanks, Brandon.
If you guys enjoyed the show, leaving a review is the best way to help others find it. Second only to sharing it directly with your friends and family. Thanks so much for helping get the word out. Hit me up at brandon@readysetstartuppod.com if you have additional questions about a topic I covered, have suggestions about another area you'd like to see me dig into, or just want to say hi. Please reach out. I'd love to get in touch. Keep imagining, keep creating, keep inspiring your spheres of influence with what you're passionate about. The world may just need that dream that's in your head. See you next time.
Resonate.